Welcome back to Nick's Wine Journal. Today finds us in France. More specifically than that, we're in Burgundy. More specifically than that, we are in the area of Beaujolais. More specifically than that, we are in one of the most coveted crus of Beaujolais called Moulin A Vent. And you just saw what Moulin A Vent translates to, which is windmill, which sits right behind us up on the hill. Before we start to talk about the different climas and vineyards of Moulin A Vent that make it so special, I want to first introduce Cyril here, who is the winemaker of Cht Jacques. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I want to talk first about the viticulture because it's so significant in the wines they produce here. Let's take a look over here, and what you can see here is a beautiful example of bush-trained vines. Bush-trained vines, you plant them down, you see there's no trellasing wires, and you let them just grow. And they grow and you get this beautifully old wood here. Some of these vines are as old as 100 years old, and as they grow, they let these canes just grow up in any direction they want. They're great in that completely natural, untrained, but the fruit can be somewhat difficult to harvest. The new method and the way that the trellising system is moving, it's moving to what we have over here. And over here you have the Cordon method. And the Cordon method looks like this. Here you can see the trellising wires, and you see that you train the cane up to here, and you'll train it across this wire, and you'll leave this cane here to stay there for, how long, Cyril, will you leave that there? 10 years? 5 years?
5 years, when we judge that it's strong enough to be like this one, we take them off. The main thing for us with this cordon pruning is to have a better ripening compared with the bush train. When you have a classical goblet, because we call it goblet in French, it's really difficult to have a very good exposition to sun and wind. Mm-hmm. So the consequence is that the berries are sometimes not so ripened. When you have a cordon like this, you can imagine that you have only 1 or 2 leaves in front of each berries, so each berries receive enough sun, enough wind, so we have very good balance for the future wines. That's why, since 20 years, we decided to change this traditional Beaujolais method into this new one.
And that makes a lot of sense, and this is what they're using in many parts of the world of viticulture today. And both of these properties are owned by Cht Jacques.
Yeah.
And what is the name of this property right here?
This one is called Cht Cour.
So this is Cht Cour, which is a single vineyard within the Cru, the village of Moulin A Vent.
Exactly.
And if I'm understanding correctly, you make a Moulin A Vent, which encompasses 8 different single vineyards.
Exactly.
And the one that we're standing in right now is at the base of this hill. And if you can see behind us, this hill gradually goes up towards that windmill. And just as you have understood in the Côte d'Or, the difference here is as you go up that hill towards the windmill, what happens is that the soil becomes more shallow. And the higher you go up and the more shallow the soil is, the closer the vine will come to the granite subsoil.
Exactly.
And that granite subsoil makes a big difference because down here you have greater depth before you get to the granite subsoil. And as we can see from here, you don't just have these beautiful chunks of granite, which you can see here, but you also have a lot of beautiful, rich, dark earth. Look at that. And that right there is making the style of wine here. What's the style of wine that we're going to find here?
Here you will have a real fruity gamay, but with a certain richness of tannins. That means you will always have, even if you have a pretty light year, you will have always a certain richness coming from this richness of the soil. You have a granite, but the granite, you can see the color here. The granite has here some clay.
Yes.
And this clay will give some richness to our Cht Cour gamay. That's why we will always have a fruity and rich gamay in Cour.
Okay, and that now makes sense, why these wines are going to have more power. Of course, it all goes back to the soil. Now, behind Cht Cour here, we have another vineyard of Cht Jacques. What is behind us?
It's Carquelin.
Carquelin.
The only difference between Carquelin and the Cht Cour is the depth of the soil. That means in Carquelin you will have maximum 30-35 centimeters of soil before you find the bedrock. Here it can go till 1 meter. So this only difference, you have granite here, you have granite here. This difference will explain 100% of the difference of tasting between Carquelin and Cht Cour.
And if we continue to go up this slope, we leave Carquelin, and what do we come to next?
We are in La Roche, and it's called La Roche, the rock, because you are directly on the bedrock. Maximum 20-25 centimeters of soil before you find the bedrock, the granite, the pure granite.
And where is that situated on this hill?
La Roche is just under the windmill, the Moulin A Vent.
Okay. And the style of wine that we would get from there compared to here, what stylistically would be the difference?
La Roche will always be very mineral. You can't find the same richness in La Roche than in Cht Cour because the soil is too poor. But you will have always a lot of elegance. That means the tannins will be always really soft. And so La Roche will always be very straight, and in the middle, Carquelin, I would say it's probably the feminine one. That is very floral, pretty mineral, but not so rich in tannin than Cht Cour.
The last thing I want to point out before we move to the couple other vineyards I want to point from this angle, I want to talk just for a second about the age of some of these vines. We've had vineyards here for many years. Some of these vines are quite old.
Yeah, this one, for instance, is a 70 years old vines. So it's pretty old, but it's not so difficult to have old vines in Cht Jacques and in Beaujolais, because this short pruning, Goblet or Cordon help the vines to be able to age a long time. Just under the windmill, the last plots of Carquelin is 100 years old vines.
Wow.
So it's just like for us a museum. But it's really important to see that the soil of Beaujolais are really old and the single vineyards of Cht Jacques are really old.
And the actual plots of land here are quite small. We're talking about just a few hectares of each one of these.
Yeah, 2 hectares of La Roche, 5 hectares of Carquelin, 5 hectares of Cht Cour.
So that's very small. Okay, thank you. So the last thing I would like to just point out is if we look this way, there's some more vineyards over there. Now explain to us where they are and what they're called.
Just in the middle there, you have facing south, you have Torin. Torin, the style of Torin is the same than Cht Cour. You have deep granite, and you are facing south, so the wine will be rich, pretty spicy. And after you will have La Rochelle facing south too, with a granite that is pretty rich with clay. And at the end, if you look at the beginning of the hills, the different houses, you have Rochegres single vineyards, which is probably in Cht Jacques the one that is the more able to age during years. Rochegres, I would say that the mix between the different styles. Mineral, floral, pretty fruity, but the main thing, it's able to cross the age. You can easily now taste some Rochegres from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Rochegres is always built to age during a long time in bottle.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's go taste some wines now.